our webinar today. I think you'll find it all very interesting. It's obviously something very relevant. So we're going to dive right into it and get started right away. My name is Eric Heinrich. I'm the Senior Manager of Education at RUCKUS Networks. I'm also a former K-12 CTO. I spent 7 years with the San Francisco Unified School District. I am currently an SHLB, Schools, Health, and Library Broadband Board member. I'm also a certified CTO through the SETPA program. If you're here on the California West Coast, you might be familiar with that as well. I'm really excited to be joined today by Derek Peterson. He's the CEO and founder of Soter Technologies, also a Cycle Strong Wellness Organization member. He's a triathlete and health advocate all around, so he shares and brings a lot of perspective from the health and wellness side as well. So I look forward to jumping right into this. What is vaping? Well, it maybe is an obvious question. If you've joined this webinar, you've likely already familiar with this topic. But what I do want to call out here is that when you see this, you turn on the news almost every morning. In fact, as we were joining this session, we were all commenting about what we'd seen on this morning's news. You see this almost daily in the news, new reports on television, in the media, online, in print, and it's often to draw attention to the serious concerns about how this is affecting people's health. They're learning more and more about this every day. This hasn't been around long enough for long-term health studies, so at first there really wasn't a lot of information. But now studies and the effects are starting to really become evident. It's a bit different than traditional smoking, which has a long history that we know about already in terms of the damage that this causes to health. With vaping, it is the use of an e-cigarette. It's simply a small device that heats a chemical cocktail mixture of liquids to a point just under combustion. And that creates an aerosol. That aerosol then is inhaled deeply into your lungs, into that lung tissue, and all the cells within your lungs receive deposits of these chemical liquids. These e-cigarette devices use fairly high-powered lithium batteries, in some cases 2 batteries on devices that they call mods that allow users to customize the quantities of the mixture. And what you've seen in some cases is these batteries will explode. You'll remember that there were some cell phone devices that were not allowed on airplanes because their batteries were exploding. Very similar to that, these devices are often manufactured without any standards, let's just say, and can be prone to any number of problems, except you're putting this up to your face, and we've heard of students having shattered their jaw, or in the case of having it in their pocket, damage to their body in any different way. So these e-cigarettes use this liquid, and this liquid can contain any number of flavorings, chemicals to add flavorings. You hear about fruit medley or tutti frutti, gummy bear, and cotton candy. These aren't typically things you associate with adult consumption. Candy is something that historically you'll associate with younger folks and children, right? And yet these are the flavors that they're putting in these devices, so they become extremely appealing to minors. Just to get some sense of how appealing to minors, let's look at some statistics. At the end of 2018, there was a National Youth Tobacco Survey published by the CDC, the Centers of Disease Control, which found that e-cigarette use among high school students had surged at incredible levels, 78% increase between 2017 to 2018. And what's even scarier when you see that 78% increase, in my opinion, is that this means almost 21% of high school students are currently using e-cigarettes. It's a phenomenal number. It's terrifying, to be honest with you, for those of you who have children like myself. But maybe this isn't even the scariest statistic. Even more frightening to me was the fact that the use among middle school students had increased 48%. That's almost 5%. By now, it's likely 5% at this rate of increase or more of middle school students using e-cigarettes. This kind of data has caused the U.S. Surgeon General to warn us that youth vaping is now a health epidemic. Right? So we know this is a critical challenge. We're seeing many state and city leaders enacting legislation or proposing legislation to do something about this. and you're starting to see some states filing lawsuits against e-cigarette manufacturers trying to prevent access to these products by minors, right? So how is this impacting schools? Well, obviously, we talked about it, it's a health epidemic, and health is that first and foremost problem that we're all pretty familiar with. But what else is it causing? It's fast becoming a leading cause of out-of-school suspension, right? This is how most schools are dealing with this on a disciplinary level. And those out-of-school suspensions are pretty well documented to lead to other problems. Primarily, those disciplinary actions can lead to things like what we often call the school-to-prison pipeline, right? We know that students who are more likely to get into the juvenile criminal system are more likely to be in the adult criminal system. Out-of-school suspension is the early key identifier of entering that process and that system. But it also results in lower graduation rates, potential impacts to college eligibility, possible athletics program dismissal, right? All kinds of ancillary problems within the school. But we also see it affecting bullying and raising anxiety among kids who don't vape. They don't want to go into the bathroom. They don't want to be associated with that. They don't want to be exposed to it. And they don't want to be bullied potentially by the kids who are in the bathroom vaping, threatening them not to tell, right? So you can't put cameras in those bathrooms or locker rooms where that happens. So you need some other solution to deal with that. And increasingly, teachers are being pulled out of their teaching and learning instead to really deal with monitoring students in and out of class. And we were at the ISTE conference recently where we had some reports from teachers telling us that they've even removed the doors to all the bathrooms, including the stalls, so that students did not feel that they could go and hide and sneak a vape away. And that's just mind-boggling to me. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys today. You know, the point to all of this is that there's no one silver bullet that can solve all of these things. But what if I could tell you that there was a magic wand that could prevent kids from starting down that road to a lifetime of addiction and chronic health problems, and could prevent a child from physical abuse and anxiety caused by bullying? And it might even help a child avoid what we were just talking about, the school-to-prison pipeline. Is that something you would want, right? Well, today I'm here with Derek from Soter Technologies to tell you there is something that can do all of these things. It isn't a magic wand, but as Arthur C. Clarke once said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. It's a great quote. And what I look forward to sharing with you today isn't magic, but according to Arthur C. Clarke, it might as well be, right? Derek, let me turn it over to you here so that you can tell us a little bit more about Soter.
Thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the introduction. However, I am not David Copperfield or Houdini. We are helping schools across the nation combat this vaping epidemic. And if you'd be so kind to advance to the next slide, we can get into the presentation here. So just a quick note. Soter comes from the Greek god of personification of safety. So as an organization, we're all in with helping schools combat various safety issues. And so in doing so, we've come up and created or invented a device called FlySense, which is able to help schools understand what's going on in given locations where you can't put cameras and you can't put microphones and so forth. And this is our FlySense device, which is depicted here on the screen, which is the real-time vaping and elevated sound detection device. Next slide. And so we're looking at combating two major problems that we've seen in schools. One is bullying, that's been around since the Stone Ages, and the second one that's kind of slowly creeped up on everybody, and all of a sudden it's in our face, and that is the vaping. And through the one solution, we've been able to help schools sort of get a handle on it. We have a number of use cases where schools have now become almost vape-free. I would say 80% of the student body has stopped vaping per se. Next slide. So when we talk about vaping, I know we can go on the internet and see all the stats on vaping, but one of the most important things I want to point out here on this slide is that more than 11% of students who admitted vaping have also tried marijuana or some type of hash oil. So we're seeing that as a growing trend, that kids are actually adding, instead of having nicotine oil in their vaping pens, they're adding other chemicals, other spices, and a lot of things are very, very harmful to the bodies. Next slide. And so not only that, what's happening with the vaping that's going on is that not only the high level of nicotine, but because of the way that vaping pens work, as Eric explained earlier, they're actually ingesting these cancer-causing aerosols, specifically formaldehyde and so forth. And this, obviously, you can read all the news reports, it's leading to really major health risks among our youth. Next slide. And then in regards to bullying, it's funny in a way it's even working now. We thought we might have had a somewhat of a handle on bullying, but now because of the vaping that's going on, kids or students don't want to go into the bathrooms because they're being bullied. They're being bullied because they're not the ones vaping. And so we've also, inside of our devices, before the vaping took place, we were able to measure sound anomalies and help schools understand what's going on in the various bathrooms and locker rooms. But bullying is still a strong component of what's going on. So let's talk about the device itself. So our solution is called FlySense, and it comes from a vernacular that if we were able to be a fly on the wall and we're able to sense what's going on, you'll be basically a FlySense. And so what the device actually is and why we chose to partner with Ruckus is our device is actually a network appliance. So which means it has to be able to get connected to a network switch or a wireless switch. And that gives us two things with our device. It gives us power and it gives us communications. So the hardest part of the overall installation is how do I get power to the device and how do I communicate with the device. So we've created now almost a turnkey solution leveraging the Ruckus platform. And so what will happen is the device will be mounted typically in a bathroom and or in a locker room. When it's mounted in that location, it's going to measure overall air quality. And looking at air quality is looking for what we define as a vaping signature. And the vaping signature is no more than a fingerprint, so think of a fingerprint in the air that denotes vaping. So in our labs, we test against various body sprays. If you're a young man in the high school, you're typically going to use Axe spray, and we have every version, incarnation of Axe spray. And then we also have all the Taylor Swift perfumes, Beyonce, every Rihanna perfume. We have all those sprays, and we test against them. We also test against all the various aerosols, creating these signatures so that we can make sure that we can spot and detect vape. When we detect that somebody is vaping or the system alerts that somebody is vaping, what it will do is instantaneously, a zero delay, send out a text message and or an email message. And you can also have, if you use a mobile application, get an in-app notification. These messages will go out virtually instantaneous once the sensor detects that somebody is actually vaping. It also will send out an alert notification if it detects that there is a spike in noise depicting potentially bullying going on in the location. So we have two things that are happening. The device is constantly monitoring air quality, and it's also constantly monitoring sound. And in doing so, it can send out these alerts. Let me talk to you about how the alerts work. You as a school or as an organization can create what we call a subscriber list. A subscriber list of those who wish to receive the alerts. And that can be anybody on your staff. It can be a principal. It can be a teacher that's on duty for monitoring bathrooms. It can be a security resource officer, anyone who wants to receive the alerts. You can also have, each device has its own unique schedule when it can send out alerts. And each subscriber can subscribe to any device they want. So case in point, one person can receive alerts from just all the boys' bathrooms on the first floor. Another one can receive alerts from boys' bathroom on the second floor, and you can mix and match. You can actually build a workflow around how everybody's working in the school. Another note about the mobile application, which is nice, is that with the mobile application, a team can receive alerts for one bathroom, and then somebody can actually press the button to respond to that alert. And therefore, everybody on the team who is receiving alerts knows that somebody is actually addressing that alert. And therefore, you do not have to have multiple administrators rush into the bathroom. In the back end of the system, We also have loads of reporting capabilities. Can you advance one more slide, Eric, please? The other way. One more. There we go. So in the back end, we do have an elaborate dashboard for you to actually manage and monitor the devices. The devices require no additional software to be installed or onboarded onto the school's network. Everything is based off of a web portal. So as long as you have access to the web portal, you can manage the devices. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you're seeing an overall dashboard view where you get real-time stats on your devices and the alerts that are taking place. On the right-hand side is another screenshot of our devices from a device management console view, which I can actually see that all my devices are online, how many alerts the devices are receiving, and I also have a chance at that point to edit the devices if I choose to do so. So I want to change, such as change the device name. Next slide. Here, the devices are always reporting back to a database or a table. On the left-hand side, you're seeing what we call the alert history view. In the alert history view, that's going to receive every alert from every device in your system. There are 4 types of alerts we will send out. There's a vaping alert, there's a sound alert, there's also a disconnect alert, which usually typifies that the students try to tamper with the device. You can get an alert sent out when the device goes offline. And then you get an alert when the device is online. Let's spend some time here really quick on how everything works. So in regards to the vaping alert, if you can see, it might be an eye chart, but on the 4th column on the alert history view, it's actually going to say classification. So when you get a vape, when a vape alert goes off, you have the ability to actually mark that vape as a confirmed occurrence, or you can say it's unconfirmed, which means you did not have time to necessarily go back to the web portal and mark it. And then you also have the chance to mark it as false positive. If by chance the device triggers on an event that was not necessarily a vape, you can mark it false positive. This may happen once in a while because it may be something that we have not seen before. And so the device has what we call assisted AI. If you click it false positive, we can then learn from that and create a new signature. And you also have the ability to annotate what your discovery is. In case in point of false positive, we had one school that was doing asbestos removal, and we in our labs don't test against asbestos, we never have, and the device was triggered off for that. We were able to create a new signature in that case to not have it alert on that. That's just one simple example. So now you have to imagine our devices are being put in locations where we have no idea where they're going, where the temperature is going to be, what the humidity is going to be, what the heat and airflow is going to be. So there's a lot of characteristics that we're counting on to actually pull off that we detected a vape. And so there could be that occurrence that we think we see a vape, but it's not. So if you mark it as false positive, the device can learn. In regards to what you see is this little yellow mark, that's a sound anomaly, a sound alert. The sound alerts come as a device when it's in a location will monitor overall sound at a decibel level. There's absolutely no recording going on. It gets a baseline of sound, and what sound will typically sound every 5 seconds. So when students are in class, we would expect the bathroom to be at a quiet level. When students are in between classes, we're expecting the bathroom to have a little louder sound to it. And so we're monitoring against that. And then when we get a chance, when there's a spike in the sound over the norm, that's when we send out the alerts. If the device comes offline due to tampering, you'll get another alert. And every time you get an alert, you will also receive the exact date, time, and location that you named the device where it's coming from. On the right-hand side, you'll see the Edit Subscriber view. That's just a simple example that I can subscribe to a device, and in this case, I've subscribed 2 different times and receive alerts on that one device. On 2 different separate devices. So I can get alerts from one device from, say, 12 a.m. to 3 p.m., and then another time I can get it from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. And I can also set as a system-wide thing that nobody receives alerts after the closing of the last bell. So if school's over at 3 p.m., I can simply say no alerts go out that time. And just a little anecdotal information, a number of schools have chosen to do that only because, unfortunately, in some after-school activities, they're able to catch parents vaping in bathrooms when they go like for student plays and basketball games and so forth. Next slide. Also, in the back end of the system, there is a number of reports that you can pull from. I'm not going to go in deep dive on the reports, but I can hear I'm looking at device health, how many devices I have and that they're online. And then also on the other side, I have my incident rankings. I can give a graph on what my incident rankings over the last couple of weeks are. Next slide. And here's a slide a report I like to see, that when you first install the devices, we can see how many alerts you get right away. And that will give you your basis of your starting point. And then if you deploy our technology, and also going to get in some of our education materials, we like to see this trend go down over 4 weeks. And we've been very successful as an organization to do that. And you see, and what we're actually, why don't we go one more slide here, Eric? And give me one more. And so I want to talk to you here about technology and education. So what we've learned as an organization from doing this for a number of years now, when we first put the devices and deployed devices, the schools received marginal results in regards to having deter and improve the overall culture from stopping kids from vaping. So we were very happy that we did the David Copperfield, and we were able to pull off a device that was able to help schools understand what's going on in locations in regards to vaping and bullying. However, we quickly realized that there has to be a two-pronged approach. And that is, we need an educational component to go along with the devices. And a lot of schools have already had some type of educational awareness, health awareness, but then they're missing the devices. So as an organization, we went and employed educators to help us create the proper materials to make it a win-win. And so now, as an organization, we have education materials where we're going to sit down with you and train you on the best practices that we've learned and gathered across the nation in regards to how are schools combating this bullying epidemic. Case in point, just because if you walk into a bathroom and you don't actually catch the student with the jewel pen, does that mean you're not effective? We have information on that, and how do you go about that? Case in point, is it proper to always suspend or expel students from the school? What's a better methodology for doing it? What are other schools around the country doing? How do you combat that? So we have a lot of information that we like to share with schools and how to make this work so that you're just not having devices. And then this slide you see here, we've got countless media coverage on our success and how we've been doing this. About 2 weeks ago, you might have been able to see on CNBC, we're also featured on a thing called Vaporized. And one of our schools was a highlight of that, how they're using our devices. And next week, we're filming for the Today Show, again, highlighting devices and our success. At this point, I'd like to bring it over back to Eric at Ruckus and let him talk about why the partnership and the platform that we've chosen to solidify with Ruckus is so important to this whole solution.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. That was fantastic. I mean, I think for me, some key takeaways there is really that it's about changing behavior and not being punitive, right? That this is part of a broader, comprehensive series of things that you're going to need to do as a school. But on the flip side of that, this is something that you can deploy immediately and start addressing this issue, right? So you likely have parents who are coming to schools asking them, what are you going to do about this? I don't want my child either exposed to this, or I already know that my child has a problem with this, and we're trying to address this at home. We don't want them to now leave home and go to school and have the ability to be out of sight, out of mind, and doing it there, right? So you have superintendents, principals, school board members, and the community at large all trying to deal with this. That solution sounds like a fantastic way to immediately implement something, and you can now say, I'm doing something about it. So why Ruckus? What's our part here? Well, Ruckus is really best known for our network connectivity solutions for schools. Most of you who have work around the technology in schools, you're familiar with us because we support things like digital learning, usually and particularly when schools move to higher density of devices. We're seeing one-to-one initiatives and BYOD programs. when schools really dive into the use of those devices and they increase the number of them, it really strains the network. That's usually where they call Ruckus to come in and solve the problem. We're the ones they call when they're struggling with online assessments or streaming HD video to the classroom full of Chromebooks, iPads, or laptops. But in this day and age, we think that should be table stakes, right? We know we can do that, and we do that just about as well or better than anybody else. So we think that the network can do a lot more. We think that the network can be a platform for innovation to make schools safer, healthier, and more enjoyable for everyone. As Derek pointed out, their sensors are a network appliance. It's an endpoint on the network. And we want to be the network that provides reliable, consistent connectivity and power to those sensors so that it's something you can rely upon. So I wanted to illustrate a bit about what we do here. And in this illustration, what you see is the Ruckus ICX power over Ethernet switches connecting a series of sensors. In this case, they can be any number connected to any of the network closets. Cabling runs back to on different floors, different wings, different buildings. And then those are managed by the FlySense cloud-based dashboard. So now that you have this in place, where do you go from there, right? What you've really done is you've really started your path towards IoT. We've all talked about it. Most schools have heard about it, but they're not really sure where to start. Well, by deploying the FlySense solution, you actually have started your journey down IoT, the Internet of Things. And in education, we'll refer to that as a smart campus or a connected campus, right? You have various different Internet-connected devices and network-connected devices that provide you with some level of intelligence about the environment in schools. Well, now that you have that level of connectivity, by bringing in the Ruckus IoT suite, which includes the Smart Zone network controller, it allows you to connect different network devices and have better visibility across all of them. That's going to allow you to bring in things and connect additional sensors and network appliances, as it were. In this case, I've added some cameras. Ruckus has Axis and Pelco and a number of different partners who have IP cameras so that most schools will add these for security on premise as well. So let's say that, for instance, you have a detection event occur in a bathroom. Unfortunately, the person who is subscribed to receive the alert is not available. They're dealing with some other issue. A principal could be on the phone. A security person might be across campus dealing with some other event. Well, with the Ruckus IoT suite, we're moving in our roadmap. We have the ability to trigger a camera, let's say in this case a pan tilt zoom camera, to now record who is exiting the area where the vaping event or sound bullying event has occurred, right? So you've had a triggered event, and now you can record that event. So if someone can't get to that area, you're now able to record who left that area. If this week you've had 3 vaping events in a particular area triggered on a sensor, and you saw Timmy leave that area all 3 times, well, it's probably a good time to have a conversation with Timmy, bring in a counselor, and bring in Timmy's parents, right? But expanding upon that, you now have cameras for security and for additional insights. What about connected door locks? This is, physical security in schools. I probably don't need to speak to that much today. We're all pretty aware of the challenges that are facing schools in terms of their security. So many of them are turning to connected door locks. There's all sorts of benefits to that. There's a reason that hotels have shifted away from physical keys on their doors to this type of lock. And we support those as well, right? No more physical keys. And in any given scenario, let's say an automatic lockdown, rather than waiting 3 to 4 minutes for all of the doors physically being locked, they can be locked down in an instant at the press of a button, right? They, in fact, can be automated to be locked down based on some detection of a threat. Or they could be unlocked should there be a fire detected in the campus where you want to open all the doors to allow emergency responders right into that space without finding a locked door. Well, now that you have those devices, you can add the Ruckus wireless and Wi-Fi product solution set. You already have the controller in place. It's simply adding the wireless access points. You're viewing all that under unified management, so visibility across all of that in one pane of glass, but you've now had the ability to add additional devices like location-based panic bags. If your faculty members want to have a badge where they're able to press the badge, it activates a location beacon message to the security desk to let them know that an emergency is occurring and the location of that emergency, right? So the idea here is that we're providing you a platform to create all sorts of innovation. These are just a few ideas to give you a few possibilities, but it's really only limited by your imagination. So in terms of the solution with solder, what we're trying to do is really simplify getting into solving a very specific problem. We've created jointly 2 bundles to make this very easy. These bundles are in the most common use cases and deployment use cases. So what you're seeing on the top left there is a sample deployment of a small, very small bundle. 4 sensors, a Ruckus Power over Ethernet compact switch. That switch is fanless to allow it to be in an unventilated space, maybe a maintenance cabinet within a bathroom, but it still provides the power and the network connectivity to the sensors in that space. So in this particular example deployment, you might have 2 bathrooms on one end of this wing and 2 bathrooms just in the other direction, a boys and a girls, or an adult and student pair of bathrooms connected back to one switch. I might add that this is also a great way to just pilot this, right? You can buy a very small bundle, dip your toes into testing this solution to see if this is something you want to take further and have your school budget for this across your entire district. So this also then comes with a complete turnkey bundle, which includes the sensors, the switch, 3 years licenses for those sensors to be managed by the cloud service, and 3 years of remote support. This means that right out of the box, you have a working solution that simply needs to be uplinked to your existing network with one cord for your uplink, and you now have 3 years of a solution in place. As your first purchase, there'll also be a first-time buyer package that you'll be purchasing. What that does is it gets you a call with a human who will call you from Solder and email you to reach out to help ensure that you have your account created correctly and some consultation on best practices for the installation. Moving beyond that, obviously there's no 2 schools that are identical out there. So you can expand upon these with adding additional sensors, adding additional switches if your cabling goes back to different locations, and then different licenses as you need for those sensors and switches, right? So it's very modular. The second bundle here, which also includes all those same turnkey solution parts, is probably the more typical complete solution. It's 10 sensors and the Ruckus 24-port PoE switch. This is more common where the switch itself can be mounted in a network rack in an IDF or a network closet that has ventilation, as you typically would see, along with 10 of these sensors, 10 licenses, and everything you need. You'll see these typically deployed in the bathrooms, locker rooms, maybe libraries, cafeterias, right? Any place that students can get out of sight of adult supervision, and that's where they'll go to do this. Again, the smaller solution there is a great pilot to then bring in something like the second bundle. And we bundled these together at extremely aggressive discounts for schools because we recognize how big of a problem this is, and our primary goal is to help you guys solve this. So we would encourage you guys to really work with your network partners to talk about this, to ask them about this solution so they can bring this to you with some potential plans for deploying this in your campus. They can help you design the right solution to determine how many sensors you'll need to put where to really make sure the cabling runs back to the right closet and how you're going to get these all connected. So I'd encourage you to check out our website that you'll see there. It's ruckusnetworks.com. There is a subsite for primary education where we've highlighted this solution from Solder and Ruckus together. And again, we've tried to make this as easy as possible to do something today right away. We'd encourage you to reach out to your reseller. You can also email us after this call or anytime. NA stands for North America, sales@ruckusnetworks.com, where we will put you in touch with your regional account reps who can make sure that we connect you with the right folks. So hopefully you've learned a lot about this really awesome solution. I want to thank you, Derek, for joining us today and sharing a lot of this great solution. And I'm going to turn it over to Amy here, who's going to help moderate some of the questions that you guys have come in. And Derek and I will be on the line here to answer those.
Absolutely. Thank you, folks. Really appreciate that. So there are a number of questions that have been coming in through the Q&A and chat, so I'll share those with you, and Derek or Eric, you can answer them. So are these typically installed in restrooms only, and what is the best practice for determining how many are needed in each location and the best locations to install them?
I'll field that one. Yes, typically schools are putting them in restrooms because they're typically locations where you can't have a camera or any video recording, so they're putting them in restrooms and or locker rooms. And a typical device will cover a 12 by 12 area. And that brings up a very important thing that I forgot to mention earlier. So the name of the game is always about deterrence and changing behavior. So not only do we have the real devices, which we call fly sets, we also have another device called a smart shell, which is just a fake device, like a fake camera. Looks like the real thing, but it blinks the light periodically and works on 6 AA batteries. So we're more about advocating the deterrence. And so if you have a larger bathroom that's than 12 by 12, schools have been very effective by putting in one real device, say over like the 3 bathroom stalls, and then putting the fake device over the sink area, and they get the same results.
Thanks, Derek. What is the cost per FlySense device? I think you've answered that, but let's reiterate that one as well.
Cool. The list price, manufacturer suggested realtor list price is $995 per device. And then to connect your school's network to our network, to our cloud, is a one-time charge, not a device charge, a one-time charge of $495.
Great.
And I'm just going to chime in as well, just to let you know, when you do talk to your resellers, the bundles offer a discount, right? Those are list prices. So I encourage you guys to definitely investigate what your pricing would be based on your needs. But the bundles themselves are packaged specifically to help offer a significant discount to schools and in education.
Next question, what network security measures are built into the device? Is this a typical IoT device with no security?
So
go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, so with the Ruckus IoT suite, what is a benefit of that suite is that the devices themselves, when they do connect back, they're connecting back through our IoT gateway. Our IoT gateway becomes the only port and the only IP address that is talking out to the network. It becomes your pass-through or gateway, as many IoT solutions do, right? But now you're only exposing one IP address. We also support tunneling of traffic to our via our network to this controller. So there are different options available in terms of how the Ruckus IoT suite itself manages security between itself and the outside world. But I'll let Derek talk about about the sensors themselves.
So that was a great response, Eric. I appreciate that. So on the device itself, it does have everything's encrypted on the device in regards to this technology. It is operating on secure ports, and they're not that we've defined internally. And so we also have created our own protocols in regards to how the device communicates to our servers and so forth. So it's nothing in the world is hacker-proof, but we're pretty close to keeping the devices secure.
Great. Thank you. Can you set up any camera to record the event?
So we do. We are partnered with Pelco and Access. We're working on the integration. We have tested and demonstrated at ISTE conference this year. We had a working integration already demonstrated on our platform. We're intending to release that code to the public in our next release of our IoT suite, which is coming up here in Q4 of this year, which basically means at the end of 2019. We will release that code to the public to allow them to be able to connect this with any standards compliant VMS, video monitoring system, and camera solution. So as long as they're standards-based and they're not operating on some proprietary protocol internally, which is by design meant to lock out solutions like this, it will work with other camera systems.
Great, Eric. And on that same vein, will this work with their existing infrastructures that schools have?
Yeah, that's a great question. So another reason we came up with this bundle and meant to make it as easy as possible is yes. The answer is yes. Our Ruckus ICX switches are all standards-based, meaning that these switches will integrate seamlessly into your existing environment. It's simply uplinked to your existing switches as you would any other switch within your network environment.
Next question, does it work with an existing Ruckus Zone Director 3000 legacy gear they own as a Ruckus customer?
The Zone Director 3000 is a network controller, and so I anticipate what you're suggesting is that does it work with Wi-Fi? The answer is yes. It does work over 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi today, and so all configuration, of course, configurations matter. As you know, if you have details that's the device you're using, then clearly you're probably familiar enough with knowing that the details are in the configuration. But yes, it does support 2.4 gigahertz, and so therefore would work with your Zone Director 3000.
Fantastic. Another question: will this detect marijuana smoke as well?
That's a great question. So yes, it will detect the nicotine in the air and also the THC. However, it will not do a chemical distinction. So we will know that it's in the air as a vape, but it will not do a chemical distinction just as of yet.
Thank you. What are the chances or possibilities of defeating the devices? For example, placing a plastic bag over the device or taping it, etc.
Well, when you get close enough to the device, we will send out. You can configure the device to send out an alert. So there's what we call a proximity sensor in it. So as you approach the device, we can alert off of that and sound an alarm.
Fantastic. The $400 setup fee to connect to your network, is that per device?
No, it's a one-time charge for the school. That's it. So you can buy, if you buy 10 devices, you buy one device. It's always the same. It's a one-time cost. And if you buy 5 devices this year and 5 devices next year, you already paid that once, so you don't pay it again.
Perfect. After 3 years, do the sensors need to be replaced, or can we just renew the licenses for FlySense Cloud Service and switch support?
The sensors do not need to be replaced, and you just renew the licenses.
I think I heard that the sensors work with Wi-Fi. We're a Ruckus Wi-Fi customer, and it works great. Can we use that to connect to the sensors instead?
That's for sure.
Yeah,
so you can. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. So it works again over 2.4. So as long as you have 2.4 enabled, and that you do have the coverage and connectivity in the area where you plan to mount that sensor, right? Just like you would have to determine the same thing to connect to any other Wi-Fi device. It is Wi-Fi standards based, and we do support that.
Fantastic. So the next question is, how often do the devices need to be calibrated or cleaned?
That's a great question. So the only thing that may happen in about 8 months, if there's any dust collection on the sensor, you would have to spray it with like a can of air, and that's about it.
Fantastic. Next question. We have Ruckus Wi-Fi, but we aren't using Ruckus switches at our schools. Will the bundle work with our existing network switches? Yes.
Yes. So again, a very standards-based, simple uplink directly into your existing network infrastructure.
And I think this question's been answered, but I'll ask it again. When will the integration with cameras be readily available to schools?
End of this year. We denote that as Q4, but basically at the end of this calendar year.
Great. And then my last question I've gotten on the sense is I'd like to have my superintendent and school board see a presentation like this about your solution. How can I get someone to come talk about it?
I'm glad you asked. So, well, the first thing is we've recorded this session today. I think that's right, Amy?
Yes, we have.
And so we'll make that recording available. So for one thing, you'll be able to share this session directly Having joined it, you'll receive a link to this. Share that along. We have a lot of materials available on our website. We also have the SoterTechnologies.com website as well that you can go to for more information about their solution. But I think key would be to engage your network reseller, whoever you work with for your network solutions at your campus and in your school district, and they will be able to then come and speak in more depth on this solution, and potentially even engage somebody from Soter or Ruckus to come out and speak to this directly.
Perfect. Are these typically installed in restrooms only? What's the best practice for determining the places they are needed and how many and the locations?
They are typically installed in restrooms only. And so when we're installing in restrooms, all you have to do is look for the locations where the kids potentially may hide out in regards to they're typically going to be in the bathroom stalls. So if you have 3 stalls in the bathroom, you may want to put one device over the middle stall. And what was the second part of that question, Amy? I'm sorry.
What's the best practice for that? But I think you've answered that.
Oh, so in regards to the location also, and that's it. In regards to the devices are typically mounted on the ceiling, and just that's the way air flows. And you want to be cautious of mounting it against looking at where your ventilation is in the bathroom. We had one school place a device on the ceiling, and it was next to an external vent that was blowing air away from the sensor, so therefore it made it very difficult for the sensor to pick up on the vape because the vent was blowing the air away from, or the vape away from the sensor.
Great. Finally, is there a price break the more devices you purchase?
Yes, there is a price break, but as Eric mentioned also, part of the bundle, there is some discounting involved with that, and I would suggest that you contact your local reseller or integrator, and they can work with you on that.
Fantastic. The area of coverage was given as a 12 by 12. What about bathrooms with a very high ceiling?
So there are a very high ceiling. So we will go. The device has been proven effective up into a 12-foot, 13-foot ceiling. Once you start reaching ceilings that are 15 foot and higher, it gets a little harder for the device to detect because by the time the vape actually hits the sensor, it's pretty much dissipated at that point. So what some schools have done is they've managed to hang a pole down to gap that like extra 3 feet and lower the device down, and to manage against that. But high ceilings are always going to be it. Like some locker rooms I've been into had 18-foot ceilings, so it's a little tougher for the device to work down. So what they did is they just hung a pole down and mounted the device on the end of this pole, which gave them the distance they needed to have it effective.
Great. Will this work with our existing Cisco PoE switch infrastructure?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. Yeah. I mean, so the devices work on standards-based PoE and connectivity. The solution that we brought by putting it together is that PoE requires a budget, right? So very typically, switches do not have PoE available on every port. There's a finite amount of power budget, and typically most switches oversubscribe, and what that means is that the total amount of power available to the entire switch is not enough to provide power on every port should you have other devices drawing power. In other words, if you have VoIP phones connected to the switch using that power already today, or IP cameras connected to that switch using PoE power today, you have to be very cognizant of the amount of draw that you have on those devices at their max draw point, and to not result in connecting sensors to a switch that may be underpowered and drawing excessive power at any given time, right? So you're going to see connectivity issues at that point. What we've done is package these together to avoid those types of scenarios, and to make sure that you're, when you connect these devices, you're getting the proper port speed and duplex as well. So our engineering team has worked with the Soter engineering team together to make the proper tweaks necessary to make sure that this is a completely seamless and reliable connection.
Fantastic.
Just to follow up on that question, that is very critical. So what we've seen in the field is that the devices will have a tough time staying connected to the network, and they will go off and on, off and on. So the power budget is critical to make sure it rolls out successfully and smoothly.
Fantastic. I think we've gone through all the questions, and I really appreciate all of the attendance and attention to this really important issue. As a parent, I completely agree, and we're looking at it for all the schools in my district as well. Thank you very much for the time. The recording will be made available and sent out to those attendees after this, and there will also be an on-demand webinar available that will be posted up on the Ruckus website following this webinar. We appreciate your attention. We would love for you to follow the survey link that will come up after the webinar is over, and appreciate all your feedback. If you want anyone to come demo this, reach out to your reseller, click on the links that are in the website, and we will be happy to help you. Thank you very much for your attention today, and have a great day.